is like the third straight podcast I've done that for. North South Connection Podcast Network listeners and viewers, welcome inside the Wrestling War Zone, a Monday Night Wars podcast retrospective series. I'm JT. Join me as always, as ever, is my partner Chad. Chad, how are you?
Doing good. Exciting night. Probably the second biggest show we've done.
I'd say so. What do you think's the biggest? WrestleMania?
No, Bash at the Beach 96.
Okay. Yeah, Bash at the Beach 96. WrestleMania 12, the Iron Man? No.
No.
That was a big one. Anyway, top three. It is also our 100th episode.
I don't know about that either.
It's our 100th episode, though. We are here. Exciting. You know, some said we'd never make it. Shania Twain once said. But here we are, buddy. We made it through all 100. And kind of fitting. Like, we didn't plan it, obviously, this way. We're just chronologically moving through these shows. That the 100th one would be Starrcade, which is pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. Worked out good.
If you're listening, welcome in. Hopefully you're subscribed to any of our podcast application feeds. If you're watching, thank you. Be sure to subscribe with the button below. On the show here, we go through the history of the Monday Night Wars. We started back in September 95. So not only are we in 100 episodes, not only at Starrcade, we're also finally at the end of 1996, which is exciting as well. We're looking forward to kicking off 97 in a couple episodes. So a lot's going on here on this show. Anything from the world of the dirt sheets before we get started?
Wasn't a whole lot leading in. A couple of things, like obviously the show was sold out. Dave talked a little bit about that. The Observer the week before this show is kind of wild in that he talks about UWFI, a shoot style promotion, and ECW of all things. Like those are two big think pieces
Right.
Dave does. So that's a little weird. I did find a couple of things. So, like, he has the top three matches were sold out already.
Mm-hmm.
He says it's Six versus Eddie Guerrero, Hall and Nash versus the Steiners, and Masahiro Chono versus Chris Jericho.
So he's on those.
Then he says the main event will be Hogan defending the title against either Luger or Giant, with Luger being the more likely of the two at this point, since Hogan doesn't want Giant to turn. So keep that in mind. Only other thing was this newsletter is dated December 30th, and it has the final WWE It's Time or WWF It's Time poll results. There's not a lot of data. Let me count it real good. 110 responses, so not many, but 78 out of 110 gave it a thumbs up. That's 71%.
That's interesting.
I think so. Very, like, I was firmly in the middle, I would say, on that, and that only got like 10% of the
maybe
vote.
just things are so bad at that point and like made people feeling okay coming off Survivor Series.
I think the price point helps too.
Yeah,
which we talked about, but
yeah, for $20 and under 2 hours, like it's why not?
Yeah.
Worked well enough,
I would say for the magnitude of this show heading in, the observers were kind of a little bit de-emphasized to be honest. Like, and we talked about it, like we'll get to it in the main event with this whole world title thing, but like there's been no mention on Meltzer's end about that and whether he's unsure or what. So I do think we'll talk about there's the one commentary line at the end that kind of plays into that, but besides that, like it's not something they mentioned. So I do think that's something we discussed that has really been overblown in retrospect by people trying to poke holes and critique that. I mean, there's no indication that you should have an expectation that this is a world title match except the world champions wrestling in it, and it's a singles match. I mean, maybe, but
right.
I don't know. It seems,
and it's Starrcade, so I mean, you kind of think, okay, biggest show of the year, world champion, main event. Like you probably, I guess it's an assumption, but to your point, they never said it. So if you are assuming it, you're assuming it, which is fine. But right, don't bitch and complain after. Or make it like they misled or anything like that.
They've not been above not having a world championship match.
No.
Starrcade 2, 89, 91. So. All right, we're ready to go into the granddaddy of them all, Starrcade. It's in Nashville, Tennessee, at the Municipal Auditorium. Get a decent video package. I know we talked about those are still trailed behind WWF. That's been one of the few categories WWF exceeded WCW 1996. But this one was fine. It wasn't awful.
It felt more like an ad.
Yeah, I mean, they give kind of the highlights. They present Piper walking along. That's the basic gist. Pyro starts us off. Tony, Dusty, and Bobby are our announced team. And that's pretty much it. Not a lot of preamble before we get our opener. That's one thing about this show. There's a couple of interview segments.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not a lot of fluff here.
No, it just chugs along.
We're not seeing Adam in the Alamo Dome.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, he's not in Cedar Rapids, already reserving his seat for sold out. So our opener is Ultimo Dragon versus Dean Malenko. This is for the Cruiserweight title. Dragon comes out with all his belts. I mean, it's a cool visual, as usual. They bring in, of course, Iron Mike Tenay, who's your expert for this one. Bobby puts over the business acumen of Sonny Ono. And away we go. Dean's getting some face cheers here against the Japanese wrestler Ultimo. So a little nationality edge, I guess, with the crowd in Tennessee. They trade some holes to start. They really kind of show the evenness of each other. Sonny on the outside is like, what should I do with another belt? So he's acting pompous and confident in his man Ultimo. Some nice kicks from Ultimo. Dean hits a back suplex as things start to heat up. Tenay, I thought, had a good point. A lot of good points on commentary tonight. One was Tenay bringing up Dean facing Regal on Nitro and how successful he's been when he's like gone up the ranks and tried his hand in the heavyweight division. And kind of parallels that with Ultimo being sort of just a straight cruiserweight, Dean has the size advantage or whatnot over Ultimo. Snap suplex does give Ultimo the advantage, half crab STF. Our first Tony and Dusty bickering moment of the night where Tony says that was kind of a half crab and Dusty's like, what do you mean a half crab? It's a full crab. So there you go. On the outside, Ultimo teases Ase moonsault and then hits a tope. Dean blocks suplex and then gets another one back. So a lot of back and forth here. Dusty, shocking moment here. I don't even know if he knew it, where he says Ase and Dragon is the same thing. So
yeah,
know that Dragon's real last name was Ase. I mean,
maybe he got taught it on Saturday night or something.
A shocking development that he's the one to bring that up. Release German suplex puts Malenko back on top. He starts working over the leg now to set up the cloverleaf. I thought he had some good varied offense. He drop kicks the leg. He has the crowd behind him. This is where I thought the match really heats up. Dean pops off a nice snap power slam that gets a huge reaction. Spin wheel kick from Dragon. He goes for the power bomb and hits that for a near fall. Then you get a spot always guaranteed to get a great reaction where they do the reversal tombstone spot by Dean. He signals for the cloverleaf. Ultimo blocks that, and Dean ends up hitting a tiger driver on him, which is called that by Tenay, which was cool. Flying dive from Dean. Both are on the outside, and on the apron, Ultimo catches him with a kick and then does hit the Ise moonsault on the outside. Malenko catches Dragon on the inside on the ropes, but Dragon elbows him down. He misses his moonsault. Ultimo, I thought, did pretty good selling the knee here, allowing Malenko to lock on the cloverleaf. Sonny Ono runs up on the apron. Dean kind of goes to handle him, and Sonny kind of scurries away. When Dean turns around, he goes for the cloverleaf again. Ultimo gets a really good-looking small package for a 2 count. Clothesline from Dean. He hits his brain buster for another real close near fall. Tony's already losing his mind on the first match here. They talk about Malenko getting progressively more frustrated. And then we get our finish where it's a series of reversals and Dragon hits a tiger suplex and ends up pinning Dean Malenko, winning the Cruiserweight title. So again, I thought this was a very even match, a lot of parity between the two. But I thought they did a good job of kind of heating things up at the right moment. I thought the crowd being behind Malenko helped things move things along to where when there was those transition spots like the tombstone reversal and drop kicking the knee, setting up the cloverleaf, him signaling for the cloverleaf, he had the crowd behind him. So overall, I thought this turned into a great match. Like it was one of those matches that was kind of just kept bubbling in that very good range. And then at the very end, I was like, okay, when I look at it, I think it ends up being a great match. I don't think it's a classic like some of the stuff we've seen between Psychosis and Ray and even Dean and Ray. I thought this fell behind some of the top stuff we've seen in that regard. Ultimo versus Ray from World War III, I like better too. But I ended up giving this 4 stars and a 7.8 out of 10, which makes it a great match and a really good opener to start off the show.
I like Tenay a lot during this, drops in the nuggets. Like the winner is going to fight Jushin Liger at the Tokyo Dome on the 4th. Yep. So that adds a little extra prestige as well. Of course, the Dragons win. He unifies the title. So it goes from 8 to 9. He now has all the cruiserweight titles across the world, right? Is that the gimmick there?
Yeah, 3 different countries is what they state.
Today, teaching Dusty about the meaning of the Ase moonsault was funny too. He goes through the last training at Bruce Lee and all that.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of the offense was great, and the crowd surprisingly was more into it than expected. Like this is one I keep having those flashbacks to Malenko and Benoit at Hog Wild. You just never know what to expect with the crowds at this time with this kind of stuff because it was definitely a little slow. A lot of mat work early, some grinding, but the crowd stayed with it, and that's like you said, it bubbled up and paid off. That the crowd held with them. So you didn't get boring chants or anything when they're kind of easing in and starting to tell the story. I thought the announcers really did a nice job too with the story. Not getting too goofy. They weren't punch drunk yet. Like maybe this is later in the night. You might get a little punchy Dusty or Bobby, but like I thought they were still pretty engaged here early on. I thought Dragon and Dean were both presented evenly. So they both got a lot of shine. I think you could have maybe sped it up just a little bit given the setting and the slot, but because the crowd stayed with it, it didn't really matter. I thought the finish was great. The crowd did all the right things too. All the near falls and spots on the back end, like they were all into each of those with all the near falls. They had a lot of time. They executed well. Dragon now is going to control the division, and I also went 4 stars. So yeah, this is a great, probably all-time WCW opener, really.
Yeah. I mean, 4-star openers, still nothing to sneeze at this point on pay-per-views.
They probably don't have a ton in their history. I don't think, right?
Yeah, either both promotions. So
yeah,
I mean, maybe top 10, 15 at this point.
Yeah.
Then we kind of pretty much just right into the next match, which is not Kensuke Sasaki, Akira Okuda versus Medusa. Kensuke Sasaki's out with Akira.
Yep.
Akira's gear just sick. Like she always has amazing gear and has that here with kind of like an oxygen mask. It just looks.
And Bobby asks if it's Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton. Yeah, she has a big blonde wig on.
Did you notice the video wall error?
No.
They had her name spelled Hukuto on the big wall behind them as she came out.
That's unfortunate, but yeah. That's a RICK flair moment there. Another guest spot on commentary here.
Stagger Lee,
our women's wrestling expert, is what he's presented as.
AWA had a women's division, right? So I guess he honed his craft there.
I guess. I gotta say, Lee running down who was in this tournament and his pronunciation. I mean, look, like obviously I've got a country accent, but Lee Marshall pronouncing Mako Satomura was
she's great,
hilarious. It was like Miko Satomura. It was
our big expert.
That's our expert.
He's also a royalty expert. He breaks down the royal marriage routines.
Yes.
Hokuto
he breaks kayfabe on that pretty quickly. Costume change with a new jacket for Sonny Ono. Akira starts right out with an attack, and this you could tell. Like, I think if you're unfamiliar with All Japan Women, and by this point Akira was already moved on to Gaia. This is their style, like the heels. They'll attack before the bell, like usually when the streamers are coming down. So this goes to like the Dump Matsumoto, that type of lineage where this is a classic move. So the first couple minutes of that were classic heel and Joshi work here from Akira. She puts on the Scorpion in like 2 minutes, which they talk about the like Sasaki helped train her in that and whatnot. She transitions that into an STF. Nick Patrick's our referee, by the way. USA chant for Medusa. And then we get maybe my favorite Dusty Rhodes moment ever on commentary where Akira bites Medusa's foot and Dusty lets it rip. Where she biting the foot and teething on the foot,
teething on it.
Nick Patrick's hiking up his breeches or his drawers. Just amazing here.
He gets so stuck on it, just completely stuck. He cannot get past it.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
Bobby again's unsure if Nick Patrick is NWO. So we do.
I thought it was interesting too. Like this is our first NWO real discussion of the night. I mean, that opener was long. I mean, we're like over a half hour into the show and we haven't talked NWO at all.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting that they really kind of abstained in the opener and don't really talk about it till Nick Patrick shows up here.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about like the first hour of Nitro becoming NWO Nitro. Mm-hmm. This almost feels like a template of a pay-per-view where the pay-per-views are split at some point. Because pretty much the first half of this show is a WCW show and the second half's an NWO show.
Yeah.
It's very split down the middle with the way they build it. Northern Lights suplex from Akira, cross arm breaker, which Tony says is a Code Red variation. So maybe the first time Hokuto and Sergeant Craig Pittman have been mentioned in the same breath with each other as far as in-ring workers. Dusty says WCW only has one title currently held by a WCW wrestler, which I thought was a good point. Floater DBT by Medusa looks pretty ugly. Hokuto comes back with a good German suplex. Dusty's, of course, talking about what Sasaki and Okudo share together with each other. A Bulldog by Medusa looks good, and she gets a power bomb and a German suplex. And then so she's starting to make her comeback, but she gets caught on the ropes. Okudo hits a superplex. She goes to the ropes, but gets drop kicked to the outside. Then Sonny comes in the ring with the USA flag, whacks Medusa with that while Nick Patrick is distracted. Missile drop kick from Akira, and she ends it with the Northern Lights bomb. So, I mean, I thought this was solid. Like, Okudo's one of the top 30, 40, 50 wrestlers of all time in my eyes. So, I mean, this has a little bit of Genichiro Tenryu at WrestleMania 7 vibes, but I mean, it's a much better match than that. Yeah. But it's just interesting, like when you have these all-time classic guys and girls in a match that isn't great, but Medusa is not a great worker by any means, and I thought they both tried, and for the time being, like it was a fine match.
Fred Sasaki. Yeah, I didn't think Medusa was very good in this match. I don't think it was all on Akira. I think Medusa was just like all of her offense was just a step behind. I don't know. She just can't hang with her, right? It's just she's fine. Like when it comes to American female workers at this time, she's probably one of the best. But worldwide, no. Even though she's presented as such, like the float over DDT is real sloppy. The powerbomb was nice. She did get that off. I think she's able to use her power spots okay. I thought it was interesting too. They had Sasaki was like annoyed with Sonny Ono that they cheated to win. I think they kind of played it up like that.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments where like one time I think like Sonny Ono tried to grab the foot of Medusa and like Sasaki kind of shoves him. So that was a little weird. I don't know what that was about.
I wonder if they were building to something. Like to try and like a little bit, maybe a small angle where
I mean they're coming in a lot. Like Chono's coming in, so I don't know if like it seems like you had that huge New Japan WCW crossover last year, obviously that culminated in Starrcade 95, and then it kind of cooled off a little bit. But now
they could have been doing something where like he's not a fan of or her associating with him, and at least do it, something. But
right,
it's just odd to do it unless he just freelanced. But Okuda was great. Medusa again struggled, slowed things down a lot. So I don't think they ever got going because of that. They got tighter down the stretch. It was interesting. It's definitely ahead of most of the women's wrestling in the U.S. at this point for sure. Like, we saw this couple good stuff around late '95 in the WWF, but beyond that, there's really not been much else going on. It was a good showcase for Okuda, who was the right choice to drive the division as the first champion. So, despite needing Ono to win, she still won 2 3/4 for me. Like, I thought it was good, but just Medusa really dragged it down.
Yeah, right. DDP is
He's
back
banging on some keys.
On CompuServe there. Mark Madden, while they show Page, Madden, I guess they said he was. They were doing live commentary on WCWWrestling.com. I mean, Madden is just talking a mile a minute in the background. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, the internet speeds, would they have been able to keep up with that? Like,
probably not.
Live commentary and Madden. I mean,
maybe they didn't even have him plugged in. He just thought he was. Just like, you're on, Mark.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, it was interesting. Gene's in the back. He interviews Roddy Piper. This was an odd promo, honestly.
Yeah. This was bad, Piper.
This was definitely the worst of Piper we've seen. So Gene says they get together this time of the year for one reason or another. I didn't. Did you catch what that could have been in reference? Okay,
the holidays, I guess.
I thought there might be like a drinking joke.
Maybe they drink at the holidays all the time. Or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Or like, when was Gene in that match at Madison Square Garden? Was that around?
I feel like that was like the spring of '84
okay.
or something.
All right. Piper says he sings like a vulture. He brings up Hogan's size. He's 6'8". Piper's a midget compared to him. He talks about different icons in the business. Brings up Dusty Rhodes, Strangler Lewis, Gorgeous George. Says if you compare Hogan's ego and put it in Roseanne's bra cup, it would be a yarmulke. So a classic weird and pretty offensive, I guess, line from Piper that doesn't really hit. Gene asked him about the hip and he like limps away. So, I mean,
he kind of hops. It doesn't really limp. He kind of
he like hops.
He's trying to show that it's okay.
Yeah. Odd promo. Just like it doesn't. I mean, it was one where, again, I didn't really know what the objective was. Like, was he trying to oversell Hogan? Was he trying to just be too wound? I mean, Bobby kind of tries to cover for him a little bit, or Tony says it's the most wound up they've ever seen him. But
yeah, they tried to make him. He was just like so amped that he was just like rambling. But yeah, I don't think we needed this. Like, we talked a lot about Piper. We've heard a lot from Piper. He's cut some great promos. Had some great segments. Like, I would have left Piper and Hogan out of this until the main event. It's like, we don't need to see you or hear from you. Like, we've heard everything we need to hear until this point. We're good. We're sold. He mentioned Sky Low when he says being a midget compared to Hogan.
Right.
I said Hogan's a giant, came in a stretch Volkswagen. I don't know. Just not. I didn't like this at all. It could only, like, the build was so good, you could only hurt it with shit at this point. So, like, just, we don't need to. We'll see it 2 hours and 20 minutes in.
All right. I don't think Hogan's promos necessary. We'll get to it, but it was better. Yeah. Next is, if you had to pick a match in 1996 and say, what's your dream match? Like, if you're a hardcore wrestling fan, this is it. It's Jushin Thunder
That's the first line of my notes, too. It's quite the dream match here.
Yeah. Tenay's back again.
Why don't they just kick me aside on tonight? Why not just leave him in the fucking booth? Like, I guess they're trying to make it special, but he calls the whole hour of Nitro. Just do the 4-man, whatever. If you want to bring Marshall in for him for the women, but just let Tenay call the show with the other three. It's like so ridiculous. In, out. They're doing more and more cruiser stuff. So, like, just whatever. Just leave him in.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't mind him popping in as like a special occasion. I mean, but
he calls Nitro, so it's not like he's
right. But we talked about it. Like, I think on WWF, when they try to cram 4 in the booth, it can be force a crowd, especially because, like, Dusty's gonna be filibustering. I think that's the big thing. Like, Dusty can be great and he has some great moments on the show, but I mean, he's getting his spots in,
right?
And so, like, when Tenay's your expert and they want him to like be the main guy to make these vocal points, like, there's a lot like Dusty's asking. I mean, we'll get to it even in this match where he talks about the dragon screw leg whip. Like he derails today, which can be funny. It's memorable, but it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, this is certainly a dream match. They do give the background on Liger with his brain tumor, which I thought was key. And I don't know about this match. We'll get to it. I'll start at the top. Well, let me run through it, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts. I have some thoughts here. So I thought some good mat wrestling to start. Liger hits a stiff slam. Nasty chop by Ligers. He's firmly on the tag. He hits a power bomb that's kind of bullying Ray. Ray's able to hit a head scissors and kind of brings the pace up. He runs Liger to the outside, teases the dive to a good reaction. He tries to suplex Liger back in, but Liger's able to reverse that and ends up suplexing Ray to the floor. Hits a powerbomb on the floor. Tony at this point asks Tenay if Liger's being more deliberate than usual. Tenay tells him that this is the style Liger is utilizing now, which is really true. And I think that's my overarching point on this is a lot of people, I've read like reviews of this match on the internet and stuff, and a lot of it's like from the standpoint of, okay, we saw this guy versus Pillman at Super Brawl 2, and now we see him here, and it's a lot more grounded, not high flying, etc. I mean, that was the style Liger was evolving into. So it's definitely not as jarring.
If you had seen it, yeah.
If you'd seen it.
But I kind of like the callback too, like that Dusty and Tony, the last they would have seen of him is then, right? So they're not as in depth. So I like having today there to say that, like, hey guys, actually, since the last time you saw him, like that's not the Laker we remember. Well, he has changed a lot in 4 years, So I kind of like that they actually called it out.
Right. So Ray misses a drop kick from the top, a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker, and surfboard by Liger. These are staples for him. Ray's able to hit a flash German moonsault from the mat and a DDT. The springboard drop kick also from Ray. This is where Tenay does say, like, now it's official. It'll be Liger versus Ultimo on January 4th at the Tokyo Dome. Liger's able to catch Ray in a drop kick on a springboard attempt. He hits the half crab. Then we get the dragon screw.
The dragon, what'd you call it?
We had a couple moments here from Dusty. First, he talks about they mentioned like a tag match that Liger and Ray were opposite in, but they only were in their match together for like 60 seconds or whatnot. Tony says that, or Dusty says that reminds him of his old partner Dick Murdoch, who made Dusty do all the work, and then he came in and got the glory. Also says Dick Murdoch's watching this pay-per-view, so I guess at heaven they got direct TV or whatever where Dusty's
looking down.
Dick can tune in here. Then we get the dragon screw leg whip, which Dusty completely pops for. He says later on tonight he's going to say, "What was that, honey?" Well, that was the dragon screw leg whip. So there you go. Capo kick by Liger, which also gets Dusty to pop.
Yeah.
Ray's able to get his forward roll, baseball slide, and then he does. I like this. So, like, Ultimo did the Asai moonsault from the in this match, Ray does the Asai moonsault from the top rope, which Tenay talks about, kind of like one up.
And that looked awesome. I mean, he looked great.
Yep. Guillotine leg drop gets 2 for Ray, but he misses a springboard senton. Liger's able to hit the diving headbutt for 2. Liger goes to the top, but Ray catches him. He tries to go for the Rana, but Liger blocks that, hits another capo kick, and then gets a Liger bomb and gets the win. And all of a sudden, Japan is 3-0 on WCW, which is a bit of surprise.
Ray kicked out at 3. Do you think that was just like fighting spirit, or was
I think it's one of those like they're very even. So, I mean, I think there's some political stuff here. Liger at this point on is not very giving throughout the rest of his career and who he jobs to as far as the juniors. So I think there's some of that here. So here's the deal with this match. Like, do I think this is a classic? No. I think this match is probably about as good as it can be without calling it a disappointment. So, like, it doesn't meet your expectations going in. I have it at 3.5. But I wouldn't call it like a disappointment too. Like this was just kind of their floor, and that sometimes happens with these dream matches. It's unfortunate, but I also look at that and it's like, man, it's tough because again, like when you see all the reviews, it's like all widely disappointing. Well, maybe, but I still don't necessarily think it was like an unsuccessful match, and it certainly wasn't a bad match either. It's just it could have been a match of the year candidate, maybe. But I'm not sure if their styles actually mesh great at this point in time for them to have that type of match.
So along the lines of like, a better version of it, like Perfect and Shawn, those matches that just get hype. And then Edge and Christian in 01, like that first one, the Hardy match, the first one, like you just expect it to be a dream match, Shawn and Marty's first match at the Rumble, but they're all very good, but the expectations really drag them down into people thinking, well, they bombed or whatever. But, there's some good snap offense from Liger here. I liked, like we talked a lot about the commentary. It's not going to keep going into, but I thought it was really good all through this match, both with the humor stuff with Dusty, but also Tenay illustrating the changes in Liger's style. I did like the finish. Like you said, that moonsault was awesome. It just wasn't kind of the insanity you'd expect. Like you said, it felt almost similar to the opener too, which I think hurt it maybe in a way. Like it was very similar. So now we've had two cruiser matches that were not like a cruiser style that we've been kind of associating with now on Nitro, etc., or with the Malenko, with the Mysterio that do open the throttle. These were much more grounded and mat based. Now we've had two of them out of three matches, so they felt a little bit like a dupe of the opener. Again, the storytelling was good. The crowd stayed with it again, but it felt a little bit like an exhibition, just for like a hard fought grinder, but it just felt awkward. And we had already had that, a long one opening the show. So I went 3.25. Looking back, I'm not saying I want to take Malenko Dragon off the board, but maybe we're better off with Liger Dragon and Malenko Ray, where you get one like kind of fast paced with Ray and Malenko probably, and maybe Dragon and Liger's a little bit more map based. Now I know they didn't want to probably blow the Tokyo Dome match on Starrcade, so maybe that's why we didn't go that route. But again, I mean, Malenko Dragon was great. So like whatever, if this match is 3.5, 3.25, it's fine. But I just think we had two of the same. We're now like almost an hour into the show when we've had like the same match twice in a way, one better than the other.
I think this is a match you had to book because it's like such a dream match potential. It's one of those like what ifs if you don't. So
you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
And again, it turned out it's fine. It's just like maybe they should have separated them more on the card. But to your point, I think there's a cadence on the show that they're building kind of the non-NWO, and then they go it hard at the end with like the big war to close the show. So, it's hard to sit there and say they should have. Maybe they could have switched with this next one because the next one's kind of a brawl. So maybe they could have swapped this and put Liger after that. I don't know. It just felt like those are so close together, and they ended up being very similar.
All right. So yeah, now I mean this match is kind of seen as the transition to like the business end of the card and from the cruiser to the heavy style. So it's Chris Benoit versus Jeff Jarrett. Kind of interesting match on paper. Not necessarily like a feud within each other, but a lot of kind of ancillarily things going on where like it got brought up. We mentioned it on the last Raw and Nitro review that like they hadn't really mentioned Flair endorsing Jarrett much, but that rears its head again where in this match it's like, oh, well, Flair endorsed him for the Horsemen, so he's kind of involved with that. And then we have the whole Benoit situation. So face reaction for Benoit. Benoit shoves Jarrett down. Mimic's kind of kicking dirt on him. Woman is with Benoit tonight. She wasn't with him at Nitro. So she is there tonight. Some nasty chops by Benoit. He's bullying Jarrett around. Jarrett fires back. He does a strut to some boos. Interesting that the Nashville, Tennessee crowd is not too
not pro Jarrett. Yeah.
Not too hot for the Hendersonville native here. So I don't know. That was a little bit unfortunate actually. But I thought this match had really good intensity. Benoit hit some more nasty chops, just a lot of kind of back and forth, hateful strikes with each other. Benoit goes for the superplex, gets shoved off. Woman moves Benoit away from the ropes, and Benoit's able to throw Jarrett into the outside. They kind of send each other into guardrail. Back body drop inside by Benoit gets 2. And then Benoit's able to get the boot up, does some tips. I thought when Jarrett started firing back, he had one really great drop kick, which hit Benoit right on the chin.
Yep.
Commentary's digging this one, talking about, it's a good match, a lot of back and forth, belly-to-belly suplex from Jarrett. Jarrett then suplexes Benoit on the top rope, which they kind of call it out as him using his maneuver. He goes for the figure four, but Woman rakes the eyes. That's when it's brought. This is a non-disqualification match, so that's okay. And then we get our finish, which I really like this finish. I thought this was a very clever finish. We'll get to it at the end of the show. I loved a lot of the finishes on the show. So Arn Anderson comes out. He walks by Benoit and kind of looks like he's sort of walking to the corner of Jarrett. They again bring up Jarrett was endorsed by Flair.
Yep.
They're on the outside where we get a back body drop by Jeff, and Benoit gets big air off of that. Now the Dungeon of Doom comes out. So it's Conan and Hugh Morris. They grab Woman. Woman kicks Hugh Morris right in the nuts. And then at the same time, it's tough to explain. So Jarrett's on the floor. Arn tells him to send Benoit into the ring because also out has come Sullivan. So it looks like, Arn's on Jarrett's side here. Turns around, gives Jarrett the DDT on the floor. But at the same time that happens, Sullivan whacks Benoit with the wooden chair. Arn picks up Jarrett and without knowing it, kind of rolls him into the ring, and he's able to get like a dead arm on top of Benoit to get the pinfall. So I really love the finish. Like Arn seemed surprised by it. They timed it well. It didn't look awkward. Like it was obvious. Arn should have known like he was putting Jarrett into a position to win the match. Like the way it timed and the camera angles, it looked good. And I thought it gave some good closure to this section of this Horseman versus Dungeon of Doom feud, which kind of beyond all the Sullivan Benoit stuff, which we have a long way to go. This kind of ties the bow on the, Jarrett's endorsed by Flair. Now, we don't know what Flair's going to say with all this. Right. He wasn't there. Like, it's weird. He doesn't even show up on Starrcade. Him and Bischoff are nowhere to be seen on this show. Those are two figures that are shocking. Don't make sense. But I love the finish. Very clever finish in my eyes. I love the intensity of this match. And I really dug the match overall, actually. So I went 3 3/4. I thought this was a really good match.
Yeah, I mean, Benoit's confidence is through the roof. Like, he's just wrestling such a great, dismissive, arrogant, angry style right now. And I think it plays off the angle they got going on where he's taking this guy's wife, he's infighting in the stable, he's getting jumped and attacked. It's just like very just angry and aggressive, and he's kind of feeling himself that he's won, this gorgeous woman over his opponent. He's hard, he's crisp. Jarrett gave right back. Like, he hung. It wasn't like Benoit carrying him. I mean, Jarrett was really good in this match. We've been pro Jarrett in this run overall, so like not a surprise, but good art announced stuff too, talking over Benoit's actions. Is he out for himself? Is he out for the Horsemen? At one point, Woman is doing her usual yelling. Dusty says she's yelling like a Yomanchi. I don't know. He must have been Banshee, I guess.
Banshee, I guess.
Yomanchi. That made me laugh. And then the closing stretch is great. I agree with you with Arn, and you had to get Arn and Sullivan involved. Like they had to be there after the way this all was built up. So it was done well. It was a nasty chair shot with the way they used that wooden slatted chair where it all just smashes to pieces when he hits them. That looked really good. So I mean, it's just a fight. It was strikes, hard brawling, had some infectious energy. Benoit brimming with that confidence and his angry style. I thought it slowed down a little bit late until the finish, but it was earned given the early assault. Like I think they were okay to kind of slow the pace. Woman's getting in the mix, the Horseman, the Dungeon, and Jarrett steals the win. So fun brawl, had a good heat, stiff attack. Storyline stuff. I went 3 1/4, which I guess feels low compared to you, but I liked it a lot overall as a package. And it just is, to me, like this perfect dichotomy of the Liger match. So I had them rated the same, 3 1/4. But this was like overly impressed me, and I was excited by it. Liger Mysterio, I felt a little disappointed by it. They end up the same score, but they feel much differently,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I thought this was a good change of pace from what we've seen on the card too. So.
Yeah, it was very different so far. Yeah, it's like a hot, heated brawl versus kind of a exhibition of styles.
Right. So Jeans in the aisleway tries to get an interview with Arn and Benoit. They both blow him off, but out comes Mongo and Deborah.
Yeah, baby.
They're willing to talk, of course. Mongo says, I've been a winner all my life. When he played for a town in Chicago named Chicago, if you didn't measure up to their standards, you got ran out of the town. Woman has Benoit weak in the knees and dumb in the brain. And then Deborah, of course, maybe making a late charge as my favorite promo person of the year. She says Jeff Jarrett has the inner is a winner and has is Horseman material. So a little prelude to their duo there. Chris and Nancy are not. That girl has been rode hard and put up wet. And Jean's reaction when she says that is like, oh.
He's ready to pull the plug out. He's like, all right, we're done.
Then she says, all the guys wanted her under the Christmas tree. She only has eyes for her Stevie, though. Great line here. You will have to settle for your plump wives and boring lives. Happy New Year. As she closes it. So just, I mean, what a detestable, annoying person Deborah's become. So, and you can tell she's definitely feeling it more. Like she knows she's getting great heat from the crowd, and she's letting
play it into it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean the promo's fine. It's just I honestly did not remember that they spent this much time invested into the Horsemen at this point. You always think like the Horsemen kind of died, like we talked about with Flair kind of early in the year, and that was it.
Yeah.
I did not remember like this much TV time being put into this stable at this point. It's like they're on a lot on Nitro and on TV. And it's been fine. Like when they avoid the cryptic Sullivan Benoit shit and just are more direct and explain the heat and what's going on, it's been good. The only times we haven't liked it is just the weird, kind of sneaky talk and like shoot stuff, that no one cares about.
Right. The Sting video airs. Seen that a lot the past couple weeks.
This giant face on the corner.
Yeah. Now it's time for a tag title match. So it's the Outsiders. Six comes out with them versus the Faces of Fear with Jimmy Hart. Nick Patrick is our referee here. Nice reaction for the Outsiders. We hadn't seen them a whole lot, really.
No.
I would say, I wouldn't say they've been, de-emphasized, but, from this stretch of World War III to now, they haven't been as prominent and on as much.
I think it's the tag division. I just think when you look at the tag division, they're the tag champions. They're supposed to be leading the division, but the problem is they don't have any other tag teams that are, top-level teams. So their feuds naturally feel like a tier down. And Hogan Piper is such a big deal. That's dominating the top. So it's kind of like, what are they doing? They could have maybe done them versus Luger and someone here. Might have been a little bit better. But we get the Steiners coming soon, too, for them. So that'll feel more like a main event angle, I think, without the Steiners and some stuff with other guys that are turning and whatnot. So I think they're going to raise up naturally. But, yeah, you're right. They've definitely not been as focused on. They feel like they're just in the tag division, which is it's cool in a way because we get to see teams like Harlem Heat, Faces of Fear, get big pay-per-view matches that they may not have gotten otherwise. This is the biggest show of the year. The Faces of Fear, fourth from the top at a title match against the hottest angle. That's pretty cool,
Yep. Yeah, big moment from them. A very handmade sign that says Hogan and the NWO are just rejects from the WWF.
Okay.
Nice camera placement.
Very direct.
I don't know who that's insulting. Really. I guess I don't know. Jimmy yells tonight's the night on the way to the ring. Ming and Hall start off. Dusty says it's time to take a stand for everybody. Go against the NWO. Ming shows his power advantage right away. Big chop for Ming. Hall comes back with a bulldog that gets a 1 count. Ming's back on offense. Barbarian gets tagged in, and he gets matched up against Nash. Really good slugfest between these two. Patrick ends up grabbing Barbarian's arm. But I love this. We hadn't seen the Outsiders really show ass
struggle. Yeah.
And the Faces of Fear really take it to them. And that's something we talked about with the Faces of Fear too, that Like Ming and Barbarian at points have been disappointing, and here they really take it. Like they're ferocious, they're intense, they take it to them, they're stiff. I love that they just start beating Nash down. Good reaction from the WCW fans and boos from the NWO ones. So it's kind of a nice crowd dynamic that you're used to seeing at this point in time. In a lot of ways, I feel like this crowd's a little bit of a precursor to the USA versus Canada stuff we'll see going forward. But even then, that was more like you got different reactions, but it's based on where it was. So this is a pretty divided crowd here in Nashville for this particular match. Nash is able to hit the snake eyes, and Hall continues to work over Barbarian. So Barbarian is kind of your face in peril for a bit. But Ming, again, like he grabs Hall by the hair and just like pounds on him, and they're kind of ignoring a lot of the rules, and Nick Patrick admonishing them, but who cares? I mean, I like that. Like they're not just playing into the trap or whatever. Big boot by Barbarian. Commentators are yelling for him to cover. Patrick takes a while to count that. This is where Bobby finally comes around. He says, "Yep, that was a slow one." So finally, after all this, we're coming around.
Yeah, I mean they're berating him early in the match. Like pick a side. Like contracts are closed. Like the deadline's passed.
Yep,
this is it. Pick a side, and like they're really kind of get. So it's a good argument. Like you've never been fair before. Why are you being fair now?
Right.
All these years you've been a piece of shit, and now all of a sudden you're, playing it even.
Yeah. So Hall gets hit with a pile driver, power bomb. Dusty says Patrick isn't going to do a damn thing to call this thing in the middle. And he says, "Excuse my fridge," or whatever, which is pretty funny.
Ain't gonna do a damn thing.
Yeah. Dusty was on one tonight. Hall gets hit with an inverted atomic drop, a big boot. Barbarian gives the cover, but he's a non-legal man. I like this. Tony says, "You know what? I hate that, but that's the right call." So still like a little bit of dignity, like win the right way or whatever. Nash hits a clothesline from the apron. Jimmy Hart's on the apron. Six grabs him. He ends up grabbing the megaphone and chases Jimmy Hart to the back with that. All the while, this is with a nerve hold applied to Hall, and Patrick's just not even checking. He's ignoring it.
Mm-hmm.
Hall's able to get him up for a back suplex. Nash gets the tag. He pounds away. Big boot gets broken up with a nice elbow from Ming. Hall and Ming really slug it out. Barb loads up the boot but misses, and then Nash is able to hit the power bomb that gets 3 to a good pop from the NWO fans. So, I mean, the count on that was pretty fast, but I would say by NWO standards, this is pretty clean.
Yeah.
And overall, I really liked this match. I thought it was a really good, like, brawl that showed, the Faces of Fear kind of bucking the trend and being baby faces in that regard by not just playing into the NWO tactics. But it does show resiliency by Hall and Nash. Like we've talked about that like the NWO has been successful in a lot of ways based on their credibility. Like if they say something's going to happen,
they do it.
It happens. Yep. And in this regard, like this really helps that, like we hate their tactics that they use and kind of the numbers game that they utilize, but like when it gets down to like go time, they can end up winning for themselves. Also, one more note, like I don't know, and there was nothing in Meltzer about it, but they kept calling Nash Big Man. And I was wondering if that had something to do with like the lawsuit thing where they were just going to transition from just sticking him as the big man. I don't know. It's just odd. It was very odd. That they wouldn't say Hall and Nash much. They just said like big man. I don't know. But as a match, I thought this was a lot of fun. Good, nice Hall slugfest. Another good finish that I really enjoyed. So I went 3 1/4. Again, reading reviews of this match, a lot of disappointment seems to be the consensus. I liked it. So
it was good. Dusty breaks out Suplex at one point, and Tony breaks on that. That was good. It was, I mean, it's like right up my alley. Just a lot of hard hitting strikes. The Ming's pile drivers are always awesome. That's what leads to Bobby finally calling it out. Face of Fear are perfect for this too, because like they have the credibility. It's a solid win, but they're probably going to lose and it's fine, right? Like just them being there in the spot's a big win, but it's also a credible victory. And like Nash, it's like impressive when he hoists up Ming and jackknives. I'm like, Ming doesn't get thrown around and pinned often. So like that meant something that he beat him clean with the jackknife. So that was a cool finish for sure. And like you said, it was just a great Haas fight. So many hard, heavy strikes, slugfest. Hall really took a beating through all this. Like it was stiff. The face of fear looked legit. The Patrick stuff worked here. I like it when they use like it's. I felt like we've gotten too much with the Patrick stuff, where it's like almost every match he's out. Like I like when they save it for big spots. Like this is when you should deploy Nick Patrick in a big match for the tag titles. Like now, let's bust him out, right? So I kind of like that. This is the first time we really saw him play a role tonight. Is not until this point. I think it kind of worked too in a way the outsiders' faces because they got wrecked all match. So it's cathartic to have them in the heat segment, even though they're getting cheered in the arena. They've deserved a beating. So letting the faces of fear take that heat segment and kick the shit out of them kind of worked because even though they're going to win, we still get to see some come up and throughout the match where they're really taking a beating. Yeah. They went on their own, even with Patrick, given some benefits. But the outsiders needed that win, right? They needed that win. So I went 3 stars. I liked it a lot. Definitely, I saw some of the grades and reviews out there too. Like one was it Keith or Meltzer? One of them get like 1 star or something.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's not boring or anything to me. Like I really, really liked it.
Yeah. I think this is a good match that no matter who you're cheering for, you come out of the match pleased. Which helps. And it's kind of rare where it's like, all right, like, like I'm actually kind of happy that the Faces of Fear gave fight to it, but hey, if you're an NWO fan, they came back. And let me look. I'll quickly run through Meltzer's ratings. I'm pretty different on a lot of the stuff with it. So like he gives the opener 4.5, which is monster. And then let me see the women's match a 1.25 stars. Liger Mysterio 3 3/4, Jarrett Benoit 3.5, and he gives this match 1 star, which is
that's what I've seen.
I'm
interested
to see, and Keith's aligned with that too. So kind of crazy there. Definitely feel different now watching it with my eyes. Hogan's promo that we talked about. So Ted has an NWO mic and a banner. And it's Hogan's crew. We talked about like Hogan has his crew here. So it's him, Vincent, Ted DiBiase, and Miss Elizabeth, the 1988 crew together. A big NWO banner. DiBiase says sometimes you get what you ask for, and that Piper will regret asking for Hogan in the ring. Hogan says that the ticker tape parade's already going on Venice Beach. He's called him, he told him he's already won. The victory's in the bag. All of 6 kids of Roddy Piper's are going to be crying. Today is Hollywood's day. Liz is real annoyed in the background.
Yep.
So she's upset. He made this business. He will make it tomorrow, and the wrestling business wouldn't be on the map if it wasn't for him. So we're doing things Hollywood's way. That's why he's able to star with Arnold in these action movies. And he says, "What you gonna do?" and then laughs as he goes off. So again, like you said earlier, I don't think this was necessary by any means, but I did think this was pretty fun.
Yeah,
a couple good lines here, and just it was nice to see like overconfident Hogan, even though like deep down it's just a facade. He's nervous.
Yeah, I liked it. It was fine. I mean, it was way better than Piper's for sure. Again, we didn't really need it, but this at least was consistent with what Hogan's been doing in the build.
Right. Now to our final of the U.S. Heavyweight Championship match. It's Diamond Dallas Page versus Eddie Guerrero. Some back and forth to start. Eddie drop kicks him to the outside. Dallas gets sent to the railing. Dallas comes back with the thumbs in the eyes. He slams Eddie on the steps. Eddie's able to weather the storm and hits a dive coming back in, then works on the arm of DDP a little bit. Tony talks about like how people were trying to scalp tickets to get into the show, and Dusty says scalping ain't legal, and Tony says that's not my problem. It's like, all right. Meanwhile, Bobby's having some technical difficulties. He was quiet for about 3 or 4 minutes during this match here. Dallas goes for a charge in the corner, spills to the outside, plancha from Eddie to the floor. Crowd's just not into this. I think this is a weird match from a psychology standpoint. And it was weird for me to watch because I knew what was coming up with Page, and this is really the last match he works as a straight heel, I think. I mean, we'll see, but if I remember correctly. So it's just weird to see him like rake the eyes and do like these straight, like lower level heel tactics here. He hits the flapjack, he's yelling at the crowd. He uses the ropes for the abdominal stretch. So a lot of your like mid card heel tactics, he's breaking out still. Eddie's able to reverse the abdominal stretch. He gets a roll up for 2. Clotheslines executed well by Page. He goes for another charge in the corner, ends up hitting the post here. Leg sweep by Eddie looks nice. Brainbuster gets 2. Back suplex. He goes for the frog splashes. Dusty yells, "Where the big boys play." Eddie misses the splash. Dallas is able to get a Gunt-Rich knee, but then he heads to the top. He gets crushed on the top. And Dallas dives out from the ropes, gets hit with an inverted atomic drop and a good small package for a 2 count. Bobby puts over that Dallas is being resilient, kicking out of all this stuff. Then we get a cool spot where he goes for his diamond cutter, and Eddie's able to hit a backslide for a really close 2 count. That's one of the first times we've seen the diamond cutter not be successful when Pages went for it. Good slugfest, and Dusty's in this one. He says it's a good one. Spinning power bomb by Page gets 2, and the Outsiders in 6 come back out. In which Hall gives Diamond Dallas Page the Outsider's edge. Eddie is outside on the floor while all this is going on, so he doesn't see it. Eddie recovers, gets back on the apron, hits the frog splash, and ends up winning the U.S. Championship. I'll get into the post match and then give my overall thoughts. So Guerrero kind of fights out off the Outsiders in 6. He's given the U.S. title belt, which they say was made, because
new title,
so new title. So he fights off the NWO, but the number game catches up to him. Nash, the big man, takes him down. 6 gives him a ton of kicks, so we kind of set up sold out between 6 and 80 that way. And they yell at Diamond Dallas Page, "You don't get it," again, and then they take the U.S. title belt.
Take it again.
Which is such a jerk move. So, I mean, I like this match. I thought it was good, but I did think it was a little weird. I thought it took a while to get going. Crowd reaction wasn't great. So overall, this is probably actually my most disappointing match of the night for me. And I liked it. I still went 3 stars, but just like Page as a heel at the end, again, this is one that I like the finish. I really like the finish on the shows, and I think the finish worked. And I don't like begrudge the match we had to get to the finish. Like it could have been, something we just had to suffer through to get to that finish. It was kind of eating your vegetables before you get dessert. So I get that, but just from like a star rating and pure enjoyment standpoint, it was a little too jarring, a little too odd for me, and the crowd reaction affected me a good bit. So that's why I'm at 3 stars, but still good.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I think the problem with Page is, yes, like he hasn't really been built or established as like an upper mid card guy. He's been really strong, and we talked about it. He spent months in that low mid card just picking up wins on TV. Suddenly, he makes the finals of this tournament against Eddie, 3rd from the top, but his work and his character haven't been established at that level yet. So this definitely felt a little bit over his head. In ways, and his offense is still kind of coming together. Now, I think we'll get that shift in character for him that makes him much better as an in-ring worker, where he's doing less of the yeoman's work and better, at selling, which is what he's strong at. But I like the finish as well. Like, we've been building and building this whole Outsiders kind of trolling Page, and you don't get it, you don't get it, you don't get it. So they screw him here to give the belt to Eddie, and they steal the belt anyway. I also like too, there is a lot of history here. Page and Eddie fighting over the Battle Royal ring and all that stuff. Like, Page versus the Guerreros has been a feud for most of the back end of the year. So it was kind of in a way a payoff to that as well. So it definitely was a little clunky early. I thought they got it going with some cool spots. I think it's made more mid than it should have been given that. But I like the home stretch. I like the near falls into it. I like the finish a lot. Good for Eddie to get the title. Page is rising. He's going to go a different direction. I ended up going 3.5 because I still thought it was very good with the finish too. I just thought maybe they could have flirted a little bit higher if they had a tighter match.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we've seen some progression with Page. Eddie too. Eddie being third from the top, like when he beat Benoit, they talked about how big of an upset that was on Nitro. So again, I think this was kind of one of those matches where they put it this high on the card just to say, like, here's what's going to be a focal point going forward. Yep. Like something's going to happen with Page versus the Outsiders. The Outsiders are big deals, so keep your eyes peeled. Which again, in that way, I don't begrudge it, and in retrospect, it actually kind of looks better than just rewatching it or in actuality, like real time. Think so. We don't get it, but at this point, they would have done an ad for Sold Out, like Tony mentions it, but we get a weird transition where we see Eddie kind of hobbling to the back while the NWO music is playing, and then
I wonder why they didn't put it in this. That's a weird.
Oh yeah, I was interested in that, but this is our semi-main event: the Giant versus Lex Luger. Luger looks very determined. Big Luger chant. They call this the biggest match of Luger's career. A great lockup here. Back and forth. Power versus size. Good matchup. This is just one of the matchups I like, right? Like Giant looks like a giant. He works like a giant in this match. Luger is powerful, but he's at such a disadvantage, which is so like abnormal that it makes him look small. It's one of those great, like some of the workers that are able to do this so effectively. When you think like Dustin Rhodes versus Vader is an example that comes to mind, where like Dustin Rhodes is a big guy, but he was able to kind of shrink himself down when he faced Vader to where it becomes so believable, and it looks like he has like this insurmountable odds he has to overcome. It just makes everything more successful when he does make his comeback. So Luger berates the Giant with punches. Giant kind of shrugs him off, but Luger's tenacious. He's back at it. Big running clothesline by the Giant, which makes him look like a monster. Like he had speed, he had power, he has like that was just great move. Luger gets sent to the outside, and now Giant focuses on the back, and we get a real focal point on the back of Giant, on Luger from Giant, and it's varied offense. Like it's not, suplexes and whatnot, but if you look at the variety of stuff he does to the back of Lex Luger, it all looks like it hurts. It's all like big man offense. It's a clinic. Like he steps over Luger. He constantly gives forearms to the back that have a nice like thud that you can audibly hear on the camera. It sends Luger into the turnbuckle back first. Like it is a weighted, systematic attack on Luger's back, and it's just great. Like at one point he stands on Luger, kind of, it's just all of it's really well done, really effective. Gets the crowd behind Lex. As Luger chants start firing up again from the crowd, he fires back when Giant puts his head down and makes a mistake. He goes for the slam, but Giant's, weight falls back on him. That gets a near fall. Big elbow by Giant, headbutt to the midsection by Giant. Then he goes for a splash, and this was cool because he gets hung up in the ropes in the same position that Luger was able to rack him the previous time. They mentioned that on commentary, but it doesn't happen this time. I thought that was a great tease there.
Yep.
Lex then fires away, but gets a boot to the face, big forearm and kicks by Giant. He goes for a drop kick and completely wipes out, showing he has some athleticism here. Tony, I thought, brought up a good point saying that was showboating. He's big enough. He shouldn't need to do all that, which, makes somebody like Keith Lee blush now with what you see some of the bigger guys do. But it worked on commentary. Like it was, he's being effective just dominating Luger this way. Why stop that? So I thought that was good, showing that he's still young. Like they mentioned, he's only been around a year. Luger makes his comeback, just a great comeback where he fires off with punches. The Giant's wobbly, and then Luger hits him with a neck breaker. The Giant is down. The crowd is going wild. Luger pins him. Giant kicks Luger out. Luger goes flying in the air, lands on top of Mark Curtis, and out comes Nick Patrick. So Luger's calling for the rack. He's able to get him up. Nick Patrick kicks Luger right in the knee. While all this is going on, we cut the camera to Sting, who's coming out of the crowd. So there's mayhem here. Bobby finally says it's official. Nick Patrick is NWO, so we can finally put that.
Here we are, finally here.
That's what he needed. Luger's able to get the rack again, but Six comes in, hits the spin kick. Sting now has entered the ring. Bobby has redeemed himself by saying Nick Patrick is NWO, and he gets me on his bad side right away by saying we all know Sting is also.
That's it. We all know it. We all know it.
There we go. So he wasn't sure about Patrick, but he's 100% on Sting, which we talked about. Sting stares at Nick Patrick and then kind of backs him down with the bat, sends him to the outside. Fans go nuts for that. Then he drops the bat into the middle of the ring. He whispers something into Luger's ear. Then he goes over and whispers something into the Giant's ear and leaves. Luger gets to the bat first, but Giant steps on the bat. Luger's on his hands and knees. He looks up at the Giant, who's standing on the bat. He gives Giant the low blow, is able to grab the bat, then whacks Giant with it 3 times, including the last time to the knee, and pins him. Tony celebrates like crazy. The crowd goes crazy. We are great call by Tony saying this is the first loss the NWO has had. Tony brings up to the Giant, where are your friends at now? They brought out, basically called Six and Nick Patrick jabronis. He says, this crew came out. I think you could have maybe done Wall Street here.
Yeah.
Interesting. But so puts that doubt automatically in the face here. And overall, another great finish. Everything was dramatic. The stuff with Sting, we have added intrigue here. And I just thought this was a great performance by both wrestlers. We talked about it with the Giant. He's really had one of the better rookie years you can ever hope for in a primetime position. He's carried his own weight in ring, and as a persona and a character, he's really tried. You can tell he has passion for it. And he still showed that here. He really worked his butt off here. And Luger was amazing in this match, I thought. Tony was great on commentary. He says at the end, Tony, Lex Luger, your career is finally taking the turn you've always wanted tonight. So they really celebrate this as Luger's biggest win of his career, which I thought helped put over the magnitude over it, over everything. And overall, this is a match that, even beyond anything else, Faces of Fear versus Hall and Nash, I can see is a clobbering match. And I guess I get it with this because there's not a lot of suplexes or stuff like that. But Giant's attack on the back is so good, and that finish is so good, and everything's so heated. I don't understand why people think this match sucks. And I've seen 2-star ratings, and I really don't get it at all. It's time to come around on this match and show how well worked it is and how effective it is. And it carries both of these guys throughout the first portion of 1997. So it's just a really fun match, a really good one. I went 3 3/4. I love this match.
Yeah, it was really well done. I even early when Luger is unloading and Giant's being held up by the ropes and he's trying to take him down. But then Giant fights right back. And you're right. I mean, he's had an awesome 1996. He was our MVP for a lot of the year. He's been a little marginalized since joining the NWO. I think in a way, though, that's going to fuel this eventual explosion, right? That he feels like he's been just another guy in the background or presented as Hogan's muscle instead of the dominant force he was for most of the year. Also, think back, I don't think we were too high on Luger Giant. Was it at the Bash they fought?
Yeah, I mean, it was solid, but certainly nothing like this.
Right. So we just evolved. So I think it's more to Luger. We loved his character early, but his in-ring has really caught up here late in the year. and his storytelling. This is the perfect place to use Sting. You're not probably going to use him in an event. He's going to be here. So this is the perfect spot to use him in, add a little paranoia into the NWO with him getting involved with, talking to Giant, talking to Luger. What's he doing? Haas war back and forth to a full extent. Also, all the great build we've had of Luger fighting the big men pays off here. Like he's battle tested against the big guys, and it felt like the atmosphere was great. It felt like a big war. A couple of wow spots. The intrigue at the end. NWO takes a loss, so that plays up. Everyone's excited. They finally picked up a win over the NWO. So I went 3.5, and I thought this was really, really good.
All right. Then we pretty much go right into our main event. This is the big one. Match of the century. Buffer's out there, of course. Bobby says Hogan's hands are soaked and his knees are shaking, knocking backstage. Hogan comes out first, has the same crew. So DiBiase, Vincent, and Miss Elizabeth. He does a great strut to the ring. He looks like pretty pompous here. Mm-hmm. Piper gets a great reaction, huge Roddy chants as we get our intros and whatnot. And I thought this felt like a big moment, which was nice. When they got in the ring, it felt like a huge deal. I think it's cool that and commentary mentions it, and we talked about it too. Like, I mean, the NWO, there's almost two different sects of it where the outsiders are your popular, cool kids, and Hogan's not. He's a scumbag, and they've kind of differentiated that. So you saw that with the crowd where, Piper was clearly getting more cheers than Hogan here. They even mentioned on commentary some people in NWO shirts were cheering for Piper, which was amusing. So Hogan flees right away. Bobby said he didn't think he would say this ever, but Roddy Piper go get him, so he's cheering on Piper here. Eye raking punches from Hogan, kicks. So let's get this out of the way with this match. You got to get this out of the way with this match. It's not a technical masterpiece by any sense of the imagination, but I will say, if you watch this again, watch this match and watch what they're doing and watch what the energy is. There's a way to have work rate heavy matches that feel like empty calories, right? And then there's the opposite of that, where matches that are not work rate centric, where they're not doing nothing, they're resting, there's bad strikes, etc. This match, they're cutting a good pace. These punches, and Hogan is doing all his lame heel tactics, but he's cutting a good pace. He's throwing good punches, first off. He's doing these, back rates and stuff like that, but they're constantly moving. There's not a lot of chin locks, like Hogan's doing an arm bar. None of this. Like he's on the outside, he's jawing with the fans. He's setting the pace, and it tells a good story too, where it's he's trying to bait in Piper. It works from a psychological standpoint as well. Commentary gets that over constantly. So again, this is a match that if you just run down the move for move, you're going to be like, my God, they did nothing. Mm-hmm. But as an effective match, I thought it was very effective. So Hogan misses a clothesline. Piper's able to get one. Headlock by Piper's applied well and tight. He kind of rolls it over and does a bunch of stuff with that and is able to maintain it. Hogan tries a back suplex and hits it, but Piper doesn't even break the headlock. Piper then gets hung up in the ropes and goes the outside. Eye rakes, back rakes, more brawling, actually into the crowd. DiBiase a couple of times grabs the foot of Piper, which kind of allows Hogan to again take the advantage. Then Hogan ends up going after the heel. Piper fights back from that. We get an abdominal stretch that they do a back and forth over. And then we go into the finishing stretch. And in this finishing stretch, Hogan's really sweating and, exerting a lot of energy throughout this match. And so when they're punching each other back and forth, you can see the perspiration flying off both men. It's good strikes. Piper hits a suplex that gets a 2 count. Hogan's actually the first one up. He calls for the kill shot, goes for the leg drop, misses that. Piper then is up and is kicking Hogan's leg, and here comes the Giant. The Giant grabs Piper into the chokeslam position. At this point, a fan legitimately runs into the ring, and Randy Anderson and Hogan have to kind of tend to him. Piper's able to fight out of the choke slam. He sends the Giant over the top rope, locks on the sleeper. Randy Anderson checks Hogan's arms. It drops 1, 2, 3. Anderson calls for the bell, and Roddy Piper has pulled off the upset, defeated Hulk Hogan clean as can be, in the middle of the ring with the sleeper. Very successful match. I mean, I think this is a match that didn't overstay its welcome. That's very important. It goes about 15 minutes. Felt like the right length where you didn't feel shortchanged, but it certainly didn't. It could have been stretched out very much longer and would have been ineffective as a result. So perfect length. Good finish. Like we talk about it. Piper's always the guy. He doesn't necessarily have a great finish for stuff like this. Like the sleeper is what it is, but it works once the referee calls for the bell. It's one of the few finishes that, like, when it's happening, the fans usually don't bite on it, but if that actually ends up being the finish, like, they always go nuts. You think about the Mountie.
Well, it's like that's minute of realization. Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah. There's always it's a weird.
Takes a second to hit.
I can't think of many other examples of that because seems like other submissions as a finish, like it's bought into more initially.
Well, and I think too in the tap era, it's more visual, right? So you see it happen. The old give up era was like no one really knows what's happening until the ref calls for the bell, and then it's like takes that delay. Versus the tap, everyone you can call for it and see it happening. So I think that too, like in the world of tapping. Well, I guess with the sleeper you're gonna pass out anyway, but yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So I ended up going 3 1/4 for this match. I think it's a good match. I think this is a match you put in the Hulk Andre scale of things. Like, it's a widely successful match, and as I rewatched it this time, and I'd watched it a couple of times in the past few years, I constantly come back to like the Aaron George argument for Hulk versus Andre. It's like, what would you have wanted them to do?
Yeah.
That they could have feasibly done that they didn't in this match.
Yeah.
So that I mean, if that's your barometer for success in this match, I mean, it hits on every level. Hogan's booed. Piper looks triumphant. Even the execution of what they did do in this match is very effective. Again, like their strikes are well done. They show intensity with each other. There's uncooperative spots. There's some psychology. Hogan, I mean, at this point, how many times had he lost clean since 1985, like in a singles match? Once? Like, that's it. Right? Just
Warrior, Yoko.
I mean, that's the camera jump.
Yeah, I know. It's decisive though. Like he gets pretty much eaten up in that match with Yoko. I'd put it on the list. It's got the fire, but he's not ever really in position to win. Like Yoko pretty much dominates him. So at the worst, it's the third.
Yeah.
Otherwise, second. Right. I mean, it's no more than 3.
3 or 4 times in 12 years. So it feels like a monumental moment. Commentary sells it well. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this to me, this is a match where star ratings are almost negligible. Actually, like I almost went in on like it's one of those like if I have to, okay, 3 1/4. But like, and I find it strange that like this match doesn't get that same. You get that counter argument on the other side for like some of those matches like Hulk Andre or Honky Warrior, stuff like that. But this match doesn't seem to get that. And that may be a greater point when I talk about the pay-per-view as a whole, that just like, hey, we know like eventually WCW goes out of business. So like we can just look back on retrospect. And in real time, it was all like, oh, work rate. So it wasn't going to get a good rating, just like Hulk Andre, didn't get a good rating in real time. I mean, Meltzer gives it a 1.5 stars. So it is what it is.
It was just a different viewpoint back then on that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whatever. They wanted to work at that point. And that's what feeds into the early days of the internet, is that thought process, right?
You're not going to get it. I mean, you're not going to get it for this. So what they did, I thought, was very successful.
All right, yeah. I mean, I liked it a lot too. I love the entrance. It felt like a classic entrance. We got Team WrestleMania 4, like we've talked about with Hogan, DiBiase, Vince, and Elizabeth. It feels big time. The bagpipes hitting. Piper's entrance is great. Um, just the paintbrushing Hogan still trying to be cocky and dismissive through the match is as good as, he's still trying to keep up that persona that we talked about, right? Even though we know he knows he may be panicking, he doesn't show it at all times. Um, a lot of the counters in there were fine. Like, again, it is what it is. It's just two of the greats that know how to work and tell a story. Just working the type of match they're comfortable working. They're not going to try and open it or push it. They don't need to. The crowd is eating it up. To your point, like along the Hogan Andre realm, they just didn't need to do more than this to keep the crowd engaged. You get the weight belt stuff that always plays into the Hogan matches. I like the work of the hip. That made sense into the story. Yep. Giant fucks up again. So that continues that story. So we get some good story stuff in here. And then the finish is great. Like Randy Anderson's face is like, oh shit. Like, oh my God, he's out. That's it. So, Giant leaves as everything's going on and the outsiders come out. So Giant's arguing with Hogan. So now you're feeling like, okay, we're getting a big angle as part of this. Yep. It looks like Giant may finally be done with the NWO. We get the little pathos at the end with Hogan demands his title. And Tony makes it very clear Hogan is still champion. Hogan says it was non-title. He says it even outside. And then he kind of poses after as well. So we make it very obvious that this is non-title.
Yep.
They did. We talked about it. We're okay with it. They never said it was for the title. Them waiting till the end to say it makes you think a little bit they wanted you to think it was for the title for the finish. Like, I think they did want you to think that way because as soon as it ends, Tony's saying, hey, it's non-title, it's non-title, it's non-title. So, like, I think if they really wanted to convey that, he would have said it before the match. Like, hey, remember, this is non-title, but it doesn't matter. Like they don't say anything like that. So I think there's a little piece of them that wanted to let you think maybe in the moment that Piper might have won the belt.
Maybe. I mean, I just don't think you can claim it's false advertising.
No, I don't think it's false advertising.
I think the people that argue that, I don't know, this will be harsh. I just don't think they're quite smart enough to, put.
No, I don't.
Together, right? Like,
I don't think it's false advertising, but I do think they could have said it earlier in the match. That's all. Like, I think maybe a little bit they wanted you to be lost in the moment and think maybe you get the switch and swerve you a little bit. But I don't think it was like they never advertised it as a title match or made you think it was going to be at all. They just did it by absentia or whatever. They just didn't say it. But they pulled it off. I mean, it was sloppy and simple, but it was basic. The crowd loved it. Both guys brought the heat. Piper got a ton of offense in, ton of control. Hogan fed and took the clean loss in a monster moment. So good on him. Piper gets the win, kind of pays off all the 80s stuff as well. NWO takes a second straight loss. Giant fucking up will be interesting. Where does that go from here?
Yeah.
Piper delivered on what Savage couldn't do, right? What Giant couldn't do as well. So Piper sticks it to Hogan. Good character story work. And the NWO finally kind of gets a tough night handed to them. They've dominated since they debuted. This is the worst night they've had on a big stage with these two losses, with the Giant losing, with Hogan losing. So I went 3 stars on the match. I've always been a fan of this match. I've always talked it up as a forgotten classic. And now that we've watched the build, I love it even more because the build was so good. So, yeah, I think it met the icon legend status they gave it to. It's a very quality, worthy main event for Starrcade. And it's a good bookend to their story.
Yeah, I really like the angle at the end. Like when Giant touches Nash, he's like, don't put your finger on me.
Yeah.
Very good. I mean, a lot of dissension. And that you see that felt very like sports like where you have some inner fighting if like a dominant team
things are going wrong.
Yeah, like a number 1 seed in the NCAA basketball tournament and all of a sudden like is on the ropes. It was good. So that's it. Like they basically sign off of that with Hogan literally spitting on the camera as he had the NWO belt.
They left some good stuff open for Nitro. Like it's what's going to happen now. What's going to happen with the NWO? Where does Piper go from here? Is he sticking around? Is he in WCW? Like what's up?
Right. Right. Our catering tonight was catering to the stars.
Of course it was.
Not the most unique name there.
Okay.
All right. Ready to get into our awards?
Yeah, let's do that. All right, match of the night. I ended up going Luger Giant.
No.
Yeah. Dragon. It's my highest is Dragon. I'll say this: my highest rated is Dragon versus Malenko. But I thought Luger Giant was actually like my favorite match with the most interference and all that, like the story stuff and everything. Like, so I gave it to them.
I can get on board with it. Let's do that. I mean, I'm in the same boat.
All right, moment. I went with the Piper winning.
Yeah, sure.
MVP, I give it to Luger, though. I thought he was awesome in that match. He gets the huge win. He's really building a ton of momentum. Piper was great. He doesn't win the title, though, so we need that. Who's going to be that guy? And it felt like Luger coming out of that match could be the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think Luger, Hogan, Piper, all three could win. I'm fine with Luger.
All right. I don't think we had any shots fired, really.
No.
Yeah, no debuts, right?
Nope.
I think we've seen everyone. All right, so final grade. I went 8 out of 10. I mean, I think it's a great pay-per-view. Maybe a slight notch below like the hot ones we had in the summer with Bash of the Beach and all that, but this is up there. There's nothing bad. It's all really good to great. Storyline advancement. It's a payoff show. It's a big show, and they did a nice job. I think it's where they'll struggle a little bit going forward. Sometimes not giving the payoff at times on these big shows, but this felt like a nice mix of paying off stuff, but not at the detriment of killing the angle, right? Like there's still so much here for the NWO story to tell, but they gave us a really good back-to-back feel-good moment with Luger and Piper winning, but it doesn't really hurt overall the NWO story. So I thought they had a nice mix of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a show I'm always generally, for some reason or not, a little higher than almost everyone on. Even somebody like Marty, I know his Marty Sleaze. If you look at his reviews on Pro Wrestling Only on some of the matches, grade in higher, which is a rarity with Marty. But I mean, I love this show. I honestly think this is a match of the year candidate. Like if Liger versus Ray could have delivered and been like a 4.5, 4 3/4 star match, this may be this possibly could be my favorite pay-per-view of all time. Right. Like I have it that high. I think it's one more match of the year candidate away from that, because like booking wise, I think it's almost perfect. I thought the finishes, whoever developed all of them, did a great job. Like a lot was going on in a lot of these finishes. None seemed too convoluted. A lot flowed well. And so I do think this is a show that, again, we're telling the story of the wrestling war zone. If there was a different outcome and WCW continues to dominate and WWF goes out of business, and we're talking about the upcoming WCW Monday Nitro that's about to take place in 2023, I see this show as being one of those seminal moments you could look back on, like a WrestleMania 1 or WrestleMania 3, like one of those iconic shows that really proved like they had turned the tide and was going to be the main focal point.
It's crazy how it falls apart 2 years later.
I mean,
where they're at.
24 months. It's not much.
But they're I don't want to get too far ahead, but like it's the opposite of a year later. Like Starrcade 97 does all the opposite of this stuff, right? Like fucks around in the big moments, screws you out of the big matches and the wins. And like, they don't deliver like this.
Keep that in mind. Like as good as the finishes were on this show, we'll have to keep in mind how terrible the finishes and just the overall effort on the show too. I think like everybody gave a lot of effort on this show.
Yeah, it over delivered.
You see that at 97. So I'm in a 9 out of 10. I mean, I think this is a great show. I think this is an absolute like Hall of Fame level run of pay-per-views from Great American Bash to this, and great show to end the year.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. You were a little higher like on most of the matches, so I think the little difference in grade makes sense. But I mean, for me, if you look at my grade, 8 out of 10 is very high for a pay-per-view. Like I very rarely touch 8 plus unless it's like a great show, and this was a great show.
I mean, I do think this will end up being, if we do make it to WrestleMania 17, this will probably be one of my, I don't know, 6 or 7 favorite pay-per-views.
I'm gonna bump it to 8.5. I'm gonna, as we've talked. So there you go, 8.5. All right, let's get to our combo awards for December pay-per-views. I mean, obviously Starrcade is the best show. We're gonna go Luger Giant best match.
Yep.
We call it best segment. I guess it's really best moment, right? I don't know why we have a different.
Yeah, I would say
Piper winning.
It's Piper winning.
A better commentary, Starrcade, obviously.
Oh, commentary was again like we talk about this run of shows. Like the commentary is also epic. Like
great. I mean Tony's just all locked.
Tony was outstanding on this show. Like just.
I mean, you and I are both on the all-time Tony train, but like, I think I'm glad he's gotten his flowers with his AEW return. But historically, I think he's been so underrated for years. Like, I think he's, I think he's like a top. I'd take him over Jim Ross historically. Like, to me, he's like a top 2 of like my all-time favorites. I think I like him in the WWF. I think he's awesome in '93 with Jesse. He's like an all-time run, and he's the glue of this shit all through like 96 and 97 until when he finally kind of just gives up in like 98 and 99. But like for the next couple of years, like he is, he's the force. I mean, everyone talks about Joey Styles driving ECW. Like Tony is the voice of WCW during these years, during the NWO years. So they're at the peak. And he's fantastic at weaving the stories in, making stuff feel fantastic. It sucks that during that era, everyone kind of shit on him because of the hyperbole that was forced into him. But looking back, it's like, fuck, like he is so good on all these shows week to week.
Yeah, I mean, and it feels deserved here. So that's again like when it stops doing that, then all right.
Right.
But like right now, like he had the magnitude, like he had the Gus Johnson calls that matched the excitement you were feeling watching the show.
All right, star of the night. We're gonna go Luger overall.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm sure Starrcade won the buy rate war.
The buy rate's sick. So like 0.95 is what the estimate is, which is 345,000 buys. That seems to be the consensus on the buys for Starrcade. Halloween Havoc and Bash at the Beach were the 2 biggest buy rates in WCW pay-per-view history up to that point. They were both 250,000 buys.
Yeah, so this is a monster.
Almost 100,000 more, 40% more.
So let me ask you this real quick. Do you think Piper was? Do you think he was planning to come back, stick around? Do you think they were planning to keep using him, or do you think the buy rate led them to want to bring him back for more? And should he have walked?
I mean,
we'll talk. I guess we'll see that last question as we go.
Probably should have. That's my thinking before rewatching the stuff.
I feel like I like his 97 though, but
some.
Yeah, until the end, the first half of 97.
Yeah, I mean, I think they knew that things were trending good, right? Like they'd done good ratings on Nitro. They sold out this building very quickly. They had demand for it. They probably knew what the projection for the buy rates were going in. I mean, I don't think like when he walked out on Halloween Havoc, like we talked about it in Observer, it was kind of like a short-term situation then. So I think at Halloween Havoc, they may have thought like, all right, get us through Starrcade and we'll see. But by this point, like this was such a success, like you kind of had to run with it. Like if you ever have anything that's 40% greater than the best you've ever done, like you got to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't.
I mean, you could at least try and run it back. You see, I mean, and in canon, he deserves a title shot, right? I mean, after beating Hogan clean anyway, so I can't fault them for, we're not spoiling anything. Obviously, they're going to run it back in Super Brawl, so I think it's we don't fault them for going back to the well. There, so we'll see if the magic continues.
Yeah, you got to be strategic in what you want to do with that.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it. Episode 100 is done. Starrcade is done. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. We're going to cover the night after this, obviously. So December 30th. It'll be our last episode of 1996, finally, in the books. We're kind of smack dab in the middle of the build to the Rumble on Raw. And then, of course, we'll see how they follow up Starrcade with a big night. We get the big story of the Giant going into Nitro. So how are we going to pay that off? And then before you know it, a month from today, Chad, will be in 1997. So finally made it to really what's considered probably, at least in my mind, maybe the best overall year in the Monday Night Wars when it comes to just creativity and products on the screen.
Right.
Maybe not overall success in numbers. I think it's 98 probably when you look at both promotions. But I think 97 is like, once we get, especially past Mania, I think the build to Mania on the Raw side is fine too, but post Mania, that stretch from post Mania to like Starrcade on both sides is like just a lot of really great stuff to dig into. So, all right. Until then, smell the napalm. Be sure to spread the word, subscribe, leave us some feedback and ratings and reviews as well. We appreciate all of it. Take care. Talk to you soon.